The gymnasium was not supposed to be quiet. Conrad Marsh had been conducting youth ensembles for 19 years, and he had never once stopped a performance in the middle of a concert. Not for a lost page of sheet music, not for a fire drill. Not even the December night 3 years before, when the brass section knocked over an entire music stand and sent pages fluttering into the front row. He had kept them moving, given the cutoff, given the downbeat, pulled them through. That was the job. You did not stop. The music was the thing, and the music kept going. But that November evening, Conrad set down his baton, turned away from the 41 young musicians sitting behind him, and faced the audience. The room went still. Parents with their phones half raised, grandparents in folding chairs, younger siblings who had been fidgeting in the aisles. They all went quiet because a conductor turning around in the middle of a program is not something that happens. And when something impossible occurs, the body registers it before the mind does. Conrad spoke clearly, without a microphone. His voice carried easily in a gymnasium that size. He said there was something he needed to say before the ensemble played another note, and what he needed to say was not about the music. It was about a man sitting in the back row. In the very last seat, near the far door, a man in a gray zip-up hoodie sat forward in his chair with his hands pressed together. He was still wearing his warehouse ID badge on a lanyard around his neck. He had not had time to take it off. His name was Darius, and he had arrived 4 minutes into the program, slipping into the first open seat he found without looking up, hoping no one had noticed him come in late. He noticed Conrad looking at him. He did not yet understand why. That is where the story ends. Everything that follows is how it began. 14 months before that November night, Darius sat in the kitchen of a 2-bedroom apartment on Fenwick Street and watched his wife of 8 years place a folded piece of paper on the table between them. She did not slide it toward him. She set it down and stepped back like she was afraid of what might happen if she got too close to it. He did not ask what it was. He could see the city seal at the top of the page from where he sat. Her name was Brienne, and she had made up her mind 6 weeks before she told him. He knew that later. That night, all he knew was that the paper was real, and his 13-year-old son was asleep down the hall, and the overhead light in the kitchen hummed with a small, persistent buzz that he had always meant to fix and had never gotten around to. Brienne left on a Thursday. She moved to her sister's apartment in another city. There were no accusations worth repeating here. The marriage had simply worn through, the way certain things do when two people stop finding each other in the same place. She was not cruel about it. She was not kind either. She was finished. And Darius had not seen it coming. Or maybe he had seen pieces of it and chosen not to look at the whole picture. He was not the kind of man who told himself comfortable lies for very long. So by the following Thursday, he had stopped trying to figure out where he should have done differently and started trying to figure out what came next. What came next was the math. He worked the overnight shift at a warehouse on Elm Park Road, loading and sorting freight from 9 at night to 5:30 in the morning, Tuesday through Saturday. 40 hours a week, $12.70 an hour. Before Brienne left, her paycheck from the dry cleaner on Grove Street covered their rent, and what was left from his wages covered groceries, Marcus's school clothes, and the various small expenses of keeping a child clothed and fed and moving forward. It was tight. It was always tight. But it balanced. After she left, it did not balance. The apartment cost $920 a month. His take-home after taxes ran to about $1,900 a month when there were no problems. And after rent, utilities, Marcus's phone, food, and the bus card Darius needed to get to and from the warehouse, What remained was a number you could hold in one hand, and it would not weigh much. Marcus played first chair trumpet in the school's youth ensemble, had been playing since 5th grade. He was good enough that his music teacher had recommended him for the city's junior conservatory program at the end of 6th grade, and that program cost $140 a month. It covered the ensemble rehearsal space, the insurance on the rented trumpet, the music library fee, and the cost of the 2 annual concerts. $140. It was a specific amount that felt reasonable on paper and unreasonable in practice, when the numbers Darius was working with already had no room in them. For 2 months after Brianne left, he paid it by not paying other things. He paid the program fee and skipped his own dental appointment and ate lunch at work from a bag of crackers he bought in bulk. He paid it and told Marcus nothing, because Marcus was 13 and already quieter than a boy his age should have been. And Darius had decided that the one thing he would not do was put the weight of the money problem on his son's shoulders. Marcus went to rehearsal every Tuesday and Thursday evening. Evelyn, Darius's mother, lived 20 minutes away by bus, and she came over on rehearsal nights to make sure Marcus had dinner and got to bed at a reasonable hour. She was 61 and still working part-time at a laundry on Decker Avenue, and she never once complained about the Tuesday and Thursday trips, though Darius could see in her face that she knew more than he told her. His mother had always been like that. She saw around corners. The weekend Darius took the second job was a Saturday in late September, a month and a half after Brianne left. He had seen a posting for delivery drivers, the kind of work where you pick up a van at a depot and spend Saturday and Sunday moving boxes between a distribution hub and a set of neighborhood drop points. It paid $9.50 an hour, plus a small per-delivery bonus that on a good weekend could bring his total for those 2 days to somewhere between $120 and $150. He applied on a Thursday evening, was called the following Monday, and started the Saturday after that. He did not tell Marcus what he was doing those weekends. He said he had extra shifts. It was close enough to the truth that he did not feel dishonest saying it. The second job steadied things for about 6 weeks. 6 weeks of math that, while unpleasant, at least added up. He was sleeping on weekdays from about 6 in the morning until noon or 1 in the afternoon, then up for the evening with Marcus, making dinner, checking homework, and back to the warehouse by 8:30. The days were long and the seams between them were thin, but it was working. Then, in the 3rd week of October, the school sent a letter home. Darius found it on the kitchen counter when he came in from an afternoon drive, still wearing the depot's reflective vest. The letter was from the school's music department, and it was written in the flat, apologetic language of budget announcements. The district had cut 11 programs. The junior conservatory ensemble was not among them, but the district's subsidy for the program was. Beginning in December, the monthly fee would increase from $140 to $140, with no district offset. That part was confusing until Darius read the next paragraph, which explained that the $140 had previously been subsidized by $60 a month from the district. Without the subsidy, the full cost of the program to families was now $200 a month. He set the letter down on the counter and stood there for a moment. $200 a month. He was already stretching past his limit at $140. 200 was not a stretch. 200 was a wall. He picked the letter up again and read it through twice more. There was a deadline. Families who could not commit to the new rate by November 1st would need to notify the program director so alternative arrangements could be made for the students currently enrolled. Alternative arrangements. That was the language they used. Darius had read enough of these kinds of letters to know what it meant. It meant your child exits the program and goes back to the general music class with 30 other kids and a teacher who does not have time to notice that one of them has a gift worth developing. He did not sleep well that night. He told Ray about it 2 days later at the warehouse during the 45-minute break. They took it 2 in the morning, sitting outside on the dock with a coffee from the machine that tasted faintly of the plastic cup it came in. Ray was 44, a heavy-set man with a low voice and a habit of listening completely before he said anything. They had worked the same shift for 3 years, and Ray was the one person Darius had told about Brienne leaving, the one person he had told about the second job, and the only person he told about the letter. Ray listened, finished his coffee. Then he said, "You're going to take a third job." It was not a question. Darius said he did not see another option. Ray said, "No, what's the hours on the delivery thing?" "Saturday and Sunday, 6 to 4. Sometimes later if there's volume." Ray was quiet for a moment. "There's an overnight stocking position at the grocery on Halford. My nephew had it for a while. It's Friday night and Saturday night, midnight to 7. You could do it Saturday night without doubling the van work. Friday night doesn't touch your warehouse hours." Darius did the arithmetic in his head. Warehouse nights, Tuesday through Saturday. Delivery van Saturday and Sunday days. Grocery stocking Friday and Saturday overnight. The delivery van Saturday would start after the grocery stock ended. He would need to go directly from one to the other with no sleep in between. "That's manageable," he said. Ray gave him a look that was not quite disagreement and not quite worry. It was the look of a man who understood why his friend was going to do something difficult and did not intend to talk him out of it, because talking someone out of the only option they have is not a kindness. Darius applied to the grocery position on a Wednesday and started the following Friday night. The 3-job week ran like this: Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday nights at the warehouse, 9 to 5:30. Friday night he came off the warehouse floor at 5:30 in the morning, went home, slept for 4 hours, and was back on his feet by 10. The warehouse had a break room with a cot in it, technically for overnight emergencies, and his floor supervisor, a soft-spoken man named Terrence, had looked the other way on more than one occasion when Darius needed to rest there between shifts. On the worst Friday nights, he caught 3 hours on that cot before clocking out, then came home, ate something, and got himself through the day until Marcus came home from school. Saturday morning, the delivery van. Saturday night at midnight, the grocery store. He stocked shelves on the cereal and canned goods aisle and sometimes the dairy cooler when they were short-handed, and he worked alongside 2 men named Phil and Gus, who were both students at the community college and who were too tired after their own long weeks to ask him many questions, which suited him. He was off the grocery clock at 7 Sunday morning, drove the van back to the depot by 4 that afternoon, and came home Sunday evening with enough of himself remaining to sit on the couch with Marcus and watch whatever Marcus wanted to watch on television. Those Sunday evenings were the only hours in the week when Darius did not feel the 3 jobs as a physical pressure behind his eyes. He was sleeping an average of 20 hours across the full week. He had lost 12 pounds by Christmas. Evelyn came on Tuesdays and Thursdays, as she always had, and she started leaving food in his refrigerator, not asking permission, just doing it. Containers of rice and braised chicken that he found when he came in from his shift, labeled with masking tape in her handwriting. He ate them cold, standing at the refrigerator at 6 in the morning, and each time he thought he should call her and say thank you, but was usually asleep before he got to it. He called on Sundays when he remembered, and she never mentioned the food, and he never explained why he was not cooking for himself, and they both understood the arrangement without naming it. Marcus knew something was different, in the way children always know something is different without having the language to name it precisely. Darius was home less in the evenings. There were weeks when Marcus made his own dinner from whatever was in the refrigerator, and left a plate covered with a paper towel for his father on the counter. Darius always found those plates and always ate them and always felt something specific and unnamed when he did. His son was 13 years old and covering for him. He told himself it was temporary. He told himself that every week. What he did not tell himself, and what was nonetheless true, was that Marcus had not missed a single rehearsal. Not one. Not through the winter when the bus route to the rehearsal hall changed, and Marcus had to transfer twice instead of once. Not the Thursday in January when he had a cold, and his grandmother wanted him to stay home, and he talked her into letting him go by demonstrating, right there in Evelyn's kitchen, that he could play a full passage from memory while breathing through his nose. Not the Tuesday in March when Darius's second job had shifted his schedule, and there was a full hour when no one was home to hand Marcus his bus fare, and Marcus had found the emergency $7 Darius kept under the kitchen drawer liner and left a note explaining where the money had gone, written on a torn piece of notebook paper in his precise, unhurried handwriting. 14 months, 0 absences. Conrad Marsh knew about the 0 by the end of March, because Conrad kept his own records, had always kept them, a yellow legal pad that he updated after each rehearsal session with attendance and notes. He had been doing this for all 19 years. Most students, even the dedicated ones, carried a few absences over the course of a year. Family events, sicknesses, the occasional vacation that ran a day long. Marcus had been in the ensemble for 14 months, and his column had no marks in it. Not a single one. Conrad noticed the pattern the previous December, after Marcus's third straight month of perfect attendance, despite being one of only 3 students in the ensemble who commuted from the other side of town. He did not say anything to Marcus. He watched instead. By March, he was paying close enough attention that he knew the precise fingering Marcus used on his upper register passages, the way the boy breathed before a difficult interval, the quality of patience in how he held his instrument between sections. It was not ordinary 13-year-old patience. It was the patience of someone who had learned to wait without expecting comfort. Conrad mentioned Marcus's attendance to the school's family liaison, a woman named Mrs. Tate, in April. He asked her carefully if she knew anything about the family's circumstances. He was not asking for gossip. He had a specific reason, which he explained without going into detail. Mrs. Tate said she would look into it, and 2 weeks later she came to Conrad's office and sat down across his desk and told him what she had found. She kept her voice even. Conrad listened without interrupting. When she finished, he sat for a moment with his hands flat on the desk. He said, "He's working 3 jobs." Mrs. Tate said that was what the records indicated. Conrad did not ask for details beyond what Mrs. Tate had already shared. He was not building a case. He was trying to understand the arithmetic of how a man kept a child in a program for 14 months on a schedule like that. And the arithmetic was simple. The man had decided it mattered more than his own comfort, and then he had made the decision again every single week for 14 months, without telling anyone, without asking for recognition. Kindness done without an audience is not lesser for the lack of witnesses. It is more itself. Conrad filed one piece of paperwork after that conversation. He did not tell Marcus. He did not call Darius. He planned instead for the fall concert. The news that Darius would not be able to attend any rehearsals had reached him through Mrs. Tate. He had never once been there for a Thursday evening run-through, never once heard his son in the rehearsal hall. He had attended the spring concert in May from the back of the same gymnasium and left immediately after because he had a freight pickup at 8 and had borrowed Ray's car to get there in time. Ray had come with him because Ray had taken to attending things with Darius, in the same way Evelyn had taken to leaving food in the refrigerator. It was the kind of loyalty that did not announce itself. Marcus had played a featured passage that spring night, a solo line from a piece Darius did not know the name of, 16 Measures, and Darius had stood in the back against the wall and watched his son's face while he played. Marcus had the look he sometimes got when he was fully inside something, still and concentrated, like the outside world had dropped away and left only the music and his breath and the metal mouthpiece against his lip. Darius had watched that look for 16 measures, and then the ensemble came back in around the solo, and the passage ended, and Darius had pressed his lips together and looked at the exit sign above the door. He had made it home before Ray noticed his eyes. Summer passed. School started. The fall concert was announced for the second Friday in November. Darius had been on the grocery stock shift for over a year by then, and had asked for the preceding Friday off, because the concert was at 7, and his grocery shift started at midnight, and he needed the evening. The store manager, a compact woman named Gloria, who had a rule about requests submitted fewer than 2 weeks in advance, had nonetheless approved it without comment when Darius showed her the school concert flyer. She had said only, "Be back for the Saturday night shift," and handed the flyer back. He planned to arrive by 6:30. He ironed a shirt on Thursday evening and hung it on the back of his bedroom door. He had not ironed a shirt in months, and the process took longer than he remembered because the iron's steam setting had stopped working at some point, and he had to use a spray bottle of water and go back over each section twice. The shirt came out fine. He laid a dark pair of pants across the chair in the corner of his room and told Marcus he would see him there. And Marcus had given him the particular smile he used when something mattered, but he did not want it to show, and said, "Front row, right?" Darius said he would do his best. He did not make it by 6:30. His Friday shift at the warehouse ran long. A pallet of freight had been mislabeled and needed to be resorted before the 5:30 cutoff, and the floor supervisor asked 2 people to stay and handle it. And Darius was one of them because he was reliable and because the word no was not one he reached for easily. He clocked out at 6:10, took the bus across town still in his work clothes, the ironed shirt and dark pants hanging in his closet at home, unused, and walked into the school gymnasium at 7:04 in a gray warehouse hoodie with his employee badge still on its lanyard. The lights in the gymnasium were low except over the stage, and the ensemble was already 3 pieces into the program. He could see Marcus in the second row from where the trumpets were arranged, first chair, straight-backed, holding his trumpet at rest position. Darius slid into the last open seat in the back row, near the far door, and sat forward with his hands pressed together on his knees. Ray was already there. He had gotten there at 6:50 and had saved the aisle seat across from him, without knowing Darius would need it. He had saved it by placing his jacket on the seat, and when Darius appeared, he had moved the jacket without saying anything, just nodded, and Darius had nodded back, and they had both turned to face the stage. They were 3 rows from the back. Darius could hear Marcus clearly from there. The ensemble was playing something he recognized as classical, methodical, and precise, and Marcus was playing with the rest of them, part of the full sound, 41 instruments weaving together under Conrad's hands. The 4th piece ended. Conrad lowered his baton. He turned to the ensemble, and said something quietly, and a few of the students shifted in their seats, the small, restless movement of children given a moment of rest. Then Conrad turned back toward the audience. He set the baton down on the music stand. The room shifted. People noticed. The small shuffles and whispers of an audience between pieces went quiet. Conrad said, "I want to take a moment before we continue." He said that in 19 years of conducting youth ensembles, he had seen a great many talented students. He said talent was not rare. What was rare was consistency. What was rare was the willingness to show up without fail, week after week, month after month, regardless of weather or inconvenience or difficulty. What was rare, he said, was the kind of dedication that asked nothing in return and drew no attention to itself. He picked up a folded piece of paper from the stand and held it without opening it. He said that in the 14 months this particular ensemble had been operating, one student had not missed a single rehearsal. Not one. People in the audience looked around. Conrad said the student's name. Marcus Ravencrest. The gymnasium was so quiet that the ventilation in the ceiling was audible, a low, sustained hum that Darius had not noticed before and now could hear clearly. He heard his son's name and sat absolutely still. Conrad was not finished. He said that for the past several weeks he had been trying to understand how a 13-year-old boy from the east side of town managed to reach every rehearsal on time for 14 consecutive months without a car, without a parent able to bring him, on a bus route that required a transfer. He said he had found the answer, and the answer was not something he intended to keep to himself. He said, his father works 3 jobs to keep him in this program. 3 jobs. He averages 68 hours a week. He has not attended a single rehearsal because he is always working when rehearsal is happening. Tonight, he arrived late because his shift ran over, and he is sitting in the back of this room right now. He looked directly at the back row. I'd like him to come up here. The room turned. 60-odd people turning in their seats, necks craning. Darius felt their eyes land on him the way you feel weather coming. He did not move for a moment. Ray put a hand on his arm, not gripping, just steady, and said, "Go on." Darius stood. His hands were shaking. He did not know what to do with them, so he pressed them flat against the front of his hoodie and walked down the side aisle toward the front of the room. The badge on his lanyard swung with each step. He was aware of how he looked. The warehouse clothes, the 2 days' stubble because he had not had time to shave, and he almost stopped walking somewhere around the 4th row because the self-consciousness was a physical sensation, a pressure across his chest. He kept walking. He reached the front. Conrad came down from the platform and extended his hand and shook it, firmly, the way a man shakes the hand of someone he respects without conditions. Then Darius looked up at the stage. Marcus was standing. Darius did not know when he had stood up. He was holding his trumpet in his right hand and looking at his father with a face that was doing several things at once, the way a face does when the information it receives is too large for a single expression to carry. He was 13. He had known for 14 months that something was happening, that his father was tired, that the evenings were shorter than they used to be, that there were containers of his grandmother's cooking in the refrigerator on mornings when his grandmother had not been over, that the emergency money under the drawer liner was replenished every week without discussion. He had known the shape of the thing without knowing what to call it. Now he had a name for it. His lips pressed together. He was not going to cry in front of 40 other students and 60 strangers, and he did not entirely. But the effort of not crying was visible in the set of his jaw and the stillness of his hands. He was every inch his father's son. Conrad said to the audience quietly, This is what it looks like to love someone. Evelyn was in the third row on the left side. She had both hands pressed to her mouth. She was not keeping herself from crying, and she did not try to. If you have ever watched someone you love finally be seen, fully seen by other people, you know what that moment costs the body. It is not only joy. There is a kind of ache in it, too. The long-delayed recognition of something that deserved acknowledgement for a very long time, and the grief that it took this long. Darius stood at the front of that gymnasium and received it all. The applause that had risen around him, his mother's hands, his son's face, and Ray somewhere in the back row not clapping, but just nodding with his arms folded and his head down, the way a person nods when the world has finally gotten something right. The ensemble finished their program. Marcus played his featured passage in the final piece, 12 measures of a melody that Darius later learned was from a Haydn trumpet concerto. And Darius stood against the wall at the front and listened to every note. He had never heard his son play in a rehearsal. He had heard him briefly in May, 16 measures from the back of the room, and he had heard him at home sometimes,